Hello, and welcome to the Norfolk and Norwich Risk Management Level 2 Part 2 training. There is also a step-by-step guide that accompanies this video. In this video, we will take the principles of risk management that you were taught in Part 1 and put these into practice in InPhase. Both the step-by-step guide and this video can be broken down into specific sections if you need to refer back to these training materials in the future. Within the step-by-step guide, you will see a contents page on slide 2. Once you have completed this training, you can use the hyperlinks to jump to a specific section that you need. If at any time you need to return to the contents page, you can click on the house hyperlink in the bottom right corner of the slide. There is lots of information and training resources available on the Risk Management Beat page. To access this, you can click on the hyperlink in the training guide, or you can search for Risk Management in the Beat. If you have any questions, suggestions, or need any help or support, you can contact us by emailing inphaseteam@nnuh.nhs.uk. We also have a YouTube channel which will contain all of our training resources. On slide 4 of the step-by-step guide, you will see the risk management related documents. Here you can have access to direct hyperlinks to these documents. The training in this video has been developed in adherence with the Group Risk Management Policy and the Standard Operating Procedure for Risk Management at Norfolk and Norwich. We will now look at the risk module orientation. There are 2 different methods to interact with risk information, each with a distinct purpose. Number 1 is the risk module on the left-hand side of the home page, and this is the management portal for risk. This is the operational area for risk, used to create and update risks, add and manage controls and actions, and maintain the risk record. Number 2 is the oversight dashboard, which provides a live view of risk data for reporting and analysis. The Risk Oversight Dashboard can be used to view risk, monitor trends and performance, and support oversight and governance. Please note that controls and actions cannot be added or edited via the Oversight Dashboard. This can only be done via the Risk module. For now, we will look at accessing the risk register by method 1 using the Risk module. This section will take you to the Risk Management Live on Risk Register page, which is the Risk module landing page. You will be able to view any risk that you have the access permissions for, and that is live on the risk register. Please note, if you cannot see your risk listed here below, it is likely that the risk is a different stage of approval. Alternatively, you may need altered risk access permissions, in which case, please contact InPhase team at nnuh.nhs.uk. On this page, you will have a filter bar where you can filter your risks as needed, and you can see the number of risks per stage of approval. The colour of this bar will change as you select a different stage of risk approval. For example, if we move into awaiting speciality approval, we now have a pink bar and the risks have changed. Risks in their various stages of approval will be visible as you scroll down the page. To be able to view a risk, click on the button View. Please note this will not open a separate tab, and when you come back to the risk register, any filters that have been applied will need to be reapplied. The search functions allow you to filter risk assessments to your needs. Please note that it is not possible to use the dimension panel in this page. Once a filter has been applied, you must now select the blue search button for the filter to take effect. Within this page, we are able to view risks due for review by selecting Due for Review. You can see now that we have a red bar and a title Risks Due for Review. You can also use the Next Review Date filter to manually select review dates. Again, you must hit search for this filter to take effect. As you scroll down the page, you will see an overview of all of the risks that you have the permissions to see. This page provides an overview of the risk title, the risk description, which is the if then resulting in statement, the risk ownership, our scores, the controls for the risk, the actions, the last review comments, and the next review date. Finally, you can view the risk by clicking on View. You can search for risks by using the InPhase Risk ID number. Please remember that as we are in the Live on Risk Register page, your risk will not be visible here if it is waiting approval. To access the Global Risk Search function, which will allow you to search all risks regardless of stage of approval, please select Risk Search. You can now see that we have come to another page within the risk module where we can now search for our risk. This will now tell us that the risk is awaiting speciality approval. The Risk Register tab provides an oversight for all risks live on the register that you have access permissions for. Filters can be applied and the data can be exported to Excel as required. For example, we can filter to Care Group A and click on the Export to Excel button, and we will now have an export to Excel ready. The Risk Report page can be used to extract data for reports. Filters can be applied as needed, and again, this can be exported to Excel as required. We will now look at the second way to access risks. Come back to the home page by selecting the house in the top left corner. Now select Oversight Dashboard. Now select Risk. The Risk Oversight Dashboard will provide you with broad oversight information. Again, filters can be applied to your needs. For example, if we filter again by Care Group A, we can see that this information has changed. As you scroll down the page, you will be able to see risks in various stages of approval. This starts with drafts, moves on to awaiting speciality or department approval, awaiting care group approval, awaiting chief officer review, and risks live on register. Again, you can use any one of these dashboards to export the data to Excel to your needs. We will now look at how to add a new risk assessment to InPhase. Before we look at InPhase, we will briefly go over the bow tie model for risk management that you saw in part 1 of this training. The bow tie shape helps illustrate how causes on the left could lead to a risk event in the center and the possible consequences or outcomes on the right. The controls are the barriers that we use to help prevent risk, whereas mitigations help limit the consequences if the risk event does occur. This also links to our risk description, if, then, resulting in. Meaning, if we have our risk causes, then we may have a risk event resulting in the potential outcome. The hyperlink in this video below takes you to a quick 2-minute YouTube video that helps explain the process further. To capture a new risk, we need to go into the risk module. In the top right side, we can now click on Add New Risk. You will now be met with a blank risk assessment form. Under each main heading, you can see helpful information. Give your risk a clear title. This must be in the risk of X due to Y format. The date will automatically populate to today's date. The risk descriptions must be set out in an if, then, resulting in format. Please make sure that your assessment follows this format. Remember, if is the causes or threat of the risk, then is the risk event itself, resulting in are the consequences. Provide clear background and context for your risk. This is to help others fully understand what the situation is, why the risk assessment is needed, and why this is important. Provide context so that the risk would be clearly understandable to a person who has no knowledge of your risk, department, or speciality. As said before, the causes, risk event, and consequences link to the bow tie model of risk management. These should link to the risk description, if, then, resulting in above, and will help to clearly define and present the risk. You must include causes for the risk. These are the things that could cause your risk event. You can add multiple causes to your risk by selecting Add Cause. Please ensure that all causes are numbered sequentially. You must also select whether the risk causes are active, tolerated, or resolved. An active cause is where we are doing something that increases the chance of the risk event occurring, whereas a tolerated cause is something that we allow to exist even if we are not causing it directly. For the risk event, use one concise sentence that explains what the risk is. This is the main thing that could happen. You must also list the possible consequences for your risk. Similar to causes, you can add as many consequences as you need, and these should be numbered sequentially. If for whatever reason you do not need the additional consequence, you can simply click the Remove button. You must select a category for your consequence. This is what the consequence most relates to. You must also select the risk consequence impact. 1 is considered as little to no impact, whereas 5 is considered as catastrophic impact. Please refer to the risk scoring matrix, TrustDoc ID 3838 if you need additional support in scoring your consequences. We will now look at how to score our risks. The Norfolk and Norwich, as well as the Queen Elizabeth and James Paget Hospital, have moved to a new scoring methodology. This will be referred to as either the 5+5+5 or Norfolk Enhanced Model. Information on this change can be found in the video link or in the QR code below. Further information is available in the Group Risk Management Policy and Risk Scoring Matrix. As a brief overview for the principles of scoring your risk, the consequence is the severity of the impact if the risk occurs. This is scored on a scale of 1 to 5. Likelihood is the probability of the risk occurring, scored on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being considered remote and 5 being considered as almost certain to occur. Control effectiveness is how effective our existing controls are at controlling the risk. Again, this is scored from a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is substantially effective and 5 is ineffective or non-existent. The total risk score is calculated by summarising these 3 parts of the score together. The risk score is the combination of the consequence, likelihood, and control effectiveness score. The risk score is a combination of the consequence, likelihood, and control effectiveness. You can have a minimum score of 3 and a maximum score of 15. Please note that the total risk score will not be visible until after the risk has been submitted. The inherent risk score is the level of risk before any controls have been put in place. Think about how risky is the situation if we do nothing to control it. The current risk, or residual risk, is the level of risk after existing controls and mitigations have been applied. Think, what risk remains at present with the controls that we have? This does not include any further actions in plan to reduce the risk. The target risk score is the level of risk the organisation aims to achieve after applying additional controls or improvements. The control effectiveness score for the inherent risk will always be marked as 5 because this is before we have added any controls. The control effectiveness score for the current risk should reflect how effective the controls are. The target control effectiveness score should reflect how effectively controlled we would like to see the risk to be. You will need to indicate whether your risk is tolerated or to be treated. A risk that is tolerated is a risk that is accepted or tolerated because the cost, time, or effort required to reduce it would be disproportionate. The risk is acknowledged and kept under review. Risks that are to be treated are where risks exceed the tolerance and action must be taken to reduce the risk. This could involve adding controls, improvement processes, or putting safeguards in place. We will now look at the risk ownership. Both the risk owner and care group owner will auto-populate to the individual completing this assessment. To change this, simply click on your name and type the name of the person who you wish to allocate the risk to. Then click on their name. You can add named individuals to your risk assessment as required by selecting additional users. Again, simply select their name. Now you will need to select the appropriate care group and location. Multiple care groups and specialties can be added. Any relevant documents you have relating to the risk can be added here. Please note that once the risk is live, you will be able to link incidents, risks, and other modules in InPhase. If you start your risk assessment but are unable to complete this for any reason, you can save as draft. A risk number will be generated. However, this will not be sent for speciality or department approval at this stage. Once you have saved your risk as a draft, you must now go and add controls and actions to the assessment. Controls and actions can only be added to the assessment after the risk is saved as a draft. All risks must have suitable controls and actions added before the risk is submitted for speciality or department approval. Once all aspects of the risk assessment have been completed, you can submit your risk by clicking Create Risk. Your risk assessment will now require local level speciality and department approval. Please note, all risks are moderated by the risk management team. Any risk that is sent for approval but that does not adhere to the steps set out in this training package and standard operating procedure for risk management will be sent back to draft stage. We will now look at how to create and edit controls for your risk. To do this, you will need to come back into your risk, and in the top left corner of the page, you will now see controls and actions. Please select controls. To add a new control, select Add New Control. Please provide a clear, sequentially numbered control. Control titles must be unique and cannot be duplicated. The description box should be used to detail further information. Please note that control titles should be detailed, and simple control titles such as staffing is not suitable. You must also list any gaps in controls, and this will then also inform further work to be completed within your actions. You can now select Save. The action will now be visible in the page below. Should you encounter the error message below, you must select an alternative control title. All control titles must be unique and cannot be duplicated. To edit or update your control, select the notebook icon, then select the pencil, and now you can edit your control as needed. You can either save your changes or delete this control. We will now look at how to create and edit actions. This is a similar process to adding controls. To add an action, open the risk assessment and select Actions. Then select Add Action. Provide a clear, sequentially numbered action title. Again, action titles must be unique and cannot be duplicated. You can use the description box to further expand this information. The risk owner will automatically populate to the individual drafting the assessment. To change this, select your name and type the name of the person you wish to change the action to. Then click on their name. You will need to change the due date, as this will automatically populate to today's date. You can select the date for completion as needed. You can then select Create Action. Your actions will now be visible below. To edit your actions or update your actions, select Update. To edit or update the action, select Update. Here you can edit the action as needed. You can then save your changes, delete the action, or make no changes. What will happen to my risk now? To provide a brief overview of the risk approval process, once your risk has moved from draft to submit as a risk, this will now require speciality or department approval. Your speciality or department should review and approve your risk within 30 days of you submitting your risk. Once this has been completed, this can be sent to the care group or senior level for approval. Again, the care group triumvirate will have up to 30 days to review and approve your risk assessment. If at any stage there are issues with the risk assessment or these do not comply with the standard operating procedure for risk management, the risk may be returned to the risk owner. For risks that have a current score of 12 and above, these must be then sent to the Chief Officer for review. Any staff member that has an InPhase login and who has completed this risk management level 2 training can submit a risk assessment. However, only select individuals will have the authority to approve risks. We will now look at an example risk assessment. Here we can see that the risk title appropriately conforms to the risk of X due to Y format. The risk description correctly starts with if then resulting in, and there is a clear risk background and context. The causes are clearly identified and sequentially numbered. The risk event is a clear, concise sentence. And the consequences, again, are sequentially numbered and clearly identified. Here we can see that the risk has been scored appropriately and that this risk is to be treated. Finally, we can see that there are suitable actions and controls that have been added to the risk, and there is a clear risk review comment. Further information is available in this training around how to review a risk. We will now review how risks are approved. Please note, only individuals with the specific risk approval rights will be able to complete specialty department risk approval and care group level approval. The risk reporting framework can be found within the standard operating procedure for risk management at Norfolk and Norwich. There is a hyperlink available in the handout that accompanies this video. Full guidance on the risk approval process can be found in this document. Once a risk is submitted for specialty or department level approval, the department will have 30 days to approve the risk. Once approved, the risk will be reviewed by the care group triumvirate. The care group will then also have 30 days to approve the risk. Risk assessments may be returned to the risk owner at any stage if there are any gaps in compliance with the assessment. For risks with a current score of 3 to 11, the care group triumvirate have the authority to review and publish this risk live onto the register. For any risks with a current score of 12 to 15, the care group triumvirate will need to escalate this risk for chief officer review, as this is considered a significant risk. The risk escalation framework is also available in the SOP for risk management. Risks can be escalated for approval at any stage. Serious and significant risks should be escalated to the care group triumvirate for review and approval. Work should always continue to review and mitigate the risk during this approval process. Once a risk assessment has been submitted, this will be reviewed and approved at the local, specialty or department level. This will commonly be by the department manager, matron or governance team. The risk must be reviewed within 30 days of being submitted and should be discussed at the appropriate local, specialty, department, risk, governance or quality and safety meeting. The individual responsible for reviewing the risk must ensure that all aspects of the assessment are accurate and comply with the risk reporting process outlined in the SOP for risk management. Once this has been completed, you can select the green Complete Specialty Department Approval box. Once a risk has been approved by the specialty or department, the care group triumvirate is then responsible for reviewing the assessment. New risks arising must be reviewed within 30 days of the risk being approved by the specialty or department level. The care group triumvirate must ensure that all aspects of the assessment are accurate and comply with the risk reporting process outlined in the SOP for risk management. The risk must be returned to the author, specialty or department if this criteria is not met. This can be done by selecting the orange Further Information Required. For risks that have a current score of 11 or below, the care group triumvirate has the authority to publish the risk directly onto the local risk register. This can be done by selecting the green Publish on Risk Register for low-scoring risks. For risks that score 12 or above, the care group triumvirate must escalate this to the relevant chief officer. This can be done by pressing the green Send for Chief Officer Review. We will now look at how to review a risk. Each risk must be reviewed in accordance with the Group Risk Management Policy. This policy will dictate the required frequency and relevant governance forums for the risk reviews based on the current risk score. As the current risk score increases, so too does the frequency of review. Risks that have a current score of 10 to 15 must be reviewed every month without fail. Moderate risks with a current score of 6 to 9 can be reviewed every 3 months, and low scoring risks with a current score of 3 to 5 are reviewed every 6 months. You do have the ability to review your risk at an earlier stage if you require. To review your risk, open the risk and scroll to the bottom of the page. Risk reviews can be added by selecting Add Review. You will now see a pop-up box. Please note that this box can be made bigger by dragging the bottom right corner down. There is no character limit on this box. During a review, the full risk assessment should be reviewed, including the risk description, causes, consequences, risk scores, controls, and actions, to ensure that these are up to date and accurate. You will be able to add your review comments in this free text box. Risk reviews should provide a high-level summary of the work ongoing to control and mitigate the risk. It is not acceptable to simply write, quote, risk reviewed. The risk management team may moderate risk review comments that do not adhere to the SOP for risk management. Below you can see some example risk review comments that are not suitable. Finally, we will look at how to access risk register reports. Risk reports can be exported to Excel from any of the risk pages within the risk module. Please see the risk module orientation section of this training for further information. For this example, we have come to the Risk Oversight dashboard. To start your report, use the filters to select the required information. We're going to scroll down the page and find the risks that are live on the register. We will now export these results to Excel. In your downloads, you can now access the Excel document. Once your Excel document is open, enable editing. Select row 1 to add your data filters. We can now see the filters have been applied. In the top left corner of the screen, select the downward facing arrow to select the whole page. In Home, select Wrap Text and Top Align. You can amend your report as needed and delete columns as required. You can continue to format your Excel document to your specific needs. Your table is now ready to export to another document as needed. Highlight the required information and cut this. You can now open a PowerPoint slide or Word document, right-click and select the second paste option. Again, you can edit this table to your specific needs, highlight the table and edit again as needed. You now have a nicely formatted risk report. Thank you for listening to this training session. This concludes the Norfolk and Norwich Risk Management Level 2 Part 2 training. You must now complete the training assessment to receive access to the risk module. This can be found in the InPhase support page via the icon in the top right corner of InPhase. You will be required to complete an access request, which will contain the assessment when new users request access. All risk management training resources and related documents can be found on the Risk Management Beat page. Simply search for Risk Management in the search bar. If you have any further questions or require additional support, please email inphaseteam@nnuh.nhs.uk.